Hey, what's up? On this video, we are going way back to 2020 at the Great American Outdoor Show. Cameron and myself sit down with Greg Litzinger and we talk about rubs. Greg has a lot of experience with rubs. He's taken notes on them and he hunts kind of the East Coast in high pressured areas. Got a cool YouTube channel as well you want to check out. So we're gonna talk about his approach with rubs and we hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go. Give us top level of rubs in your book. What do they mean to you, and where do they rank in the terms of deer sign for you?
For me, like I said, it's very visual. It's a very visual cue. They're easy to see from far, and usually they're kind of consistent. And you find one big rub year after year, there's a reason, you know. But big, tall rubs, bushes. I love finding bushes, thumb-sized bushes that are just shredded. That is the cream of the crop for me. When I see something that can snap, just destroy a bush, you know it's a big deer, and height, big tall rubs. And like you said, even if you see a tree that's this big, it's just rubbed, really that much, it's still exciting to see because you're just like, oh, it's a big tree. And he's angry, it's probably a little bully buck or whatever, but still it's exciting to find that sign. It's probably the sign that most people can relate to when they find it. Mm-hmm. Trying to interpret it, that's the how and why that's the big key.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The rubs are the most visual thing in the woods, but I would say they're also probably some of the most misunderstood things in the woods because of how readily available they are everywhere. They're just a big misconception on, like, you see a giant rub, it's a giant deer.
Yes.
Or the opposite. If you see a small rub, you're like, oh, it's just a little buck.
I ran cameras, back in the day with flash cameras on rubs, and I was surprised at how many little deer will hit a big rub. And one big deer will walk by and smell it. He won't even hit it. Like, it's almost like you don't need to hit it. He's just checking who's there. And the activity level of each area is different. Like, some areas in the salt marsh, beginning of October, rubs are destroyed. And then nothing until middle of October, it becomes like a doe travel corridor. And bucks will come by, throw it, and they'll smell it. They'll just rub their head on it real fast and move on. And I've had other ones where, you just look at this bush, just get just demolished, and it's a one and done. Usually on bush you find he's just angry, he's frustrated. He might have got beat up 5 minutes ago, or he's just lonely and it's like, I'm going to destroy this bush and never be seen again. So trying to decipher, especially in season scouting is a lot different than postseason, because postseason you kind of set you set your schedule. I'm like, all right, I got a rub here. But if they're kind of like scattered, or it could be a staging area, it might be a bed nearby. But I like to find, lines where you get a consistent pattern movement, the old perennial signpost rubs.
Yep. That's
kind of what I gravitate towards now when I'm looking for rubs. Years ago, it was fresh, big, random rub out in the middle of the woods. I'd hunt over that thing and try and decipher it. It's just, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Those rub lines and those signpost rubs where like the tree's like almost dead. It's rubbed all the way around, it's like hourglass shape. Like, that's what I gravitate towards now.
Let's break that down a little bit. Like, when you're saying you're finding a rub line, like, what is that exactly? Like, why?
Just a travel corridor from either in between doe bedding areas, usually doe bedding areas, or like a rut cruising lane, or even like a escape hatch. I find that in the mountain a lot of times. They'll come down off of a hill, and usually it's real thick cover, and there'll be a rub line, perennial. It might not be the same as that tree, but you can see where it's going. And I think it's from, the gum pressure, where that's real thick and nasty. They can kind of travel coming up and out, because if a deer don't need to travel and cover, from what my understanding is, they won't travel in thick stuff unless they're forced to. If you find rubs and real thick stuff, usually it's high pressure area or an older deer, and then there's like security cover, and you might have a chance at, if you find out the how and why, getting a shot at a deer. But like open timber, move on.
For the person that this might be the first time they've ever really dove into rubs, can you explain what a perennial rub is too?
They're just yearly rubs, they're hit every year for a decade. I got some spots, I've been hunting for 12 years. The same tree's been hit every year, same time, and I put cameras on it, and a lot of it's nighttime activity, but it's just a single big rub. It's just a big, island in the marsh where just a lot of deer activity. So it's 20, 30 different deer. Does will rub their little heads on it or smell it. It's just a big communication standpoint. And I think it's almost like a scrape, like a community scrape. You get those, I won't call it a community rub, but it's a rub where deer, they know who's coming and going.
Signpost rub.
Yep. And I have so many does will just smell the rub. And almost every doe that walks by one of those perennial rubs will smell it, which is weird. It's like, that's strange, but she wants to know.
That's
like,
interesting.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts if deer are smelling it? Are you the guy that's putting your hand on the rub to take a picture?
No.
Or hanging your hat on the tree?
No,
or
that's all.
Bow on the tree?
Yeah, no.
Tie up against the tree?
Yeah, when I first find them, I might do that because usually I find the rubs. It's, if I'm hunting a new area like late November, I'm like, we go here and if it's a perennial rub, I'm like, that's the first time I ever found it. I'll usually, like, now cell phones are great. You take a picture.
Yeah. Drop a pin.
Yep. And I used to keep my postseason scouting, keep a log, pictures, old flash, photography, and take a picture and put it in a journal. Height, I'd measure height, distance, because you can tell, if a deer's got something on its bases, or tine. You see a little tine mark over here, or you got a big, massive center section destroyed, and there's tine marks up here. If you find 3 or 4 more of them in a general area, odds are it's probably
the same deer.
Yeah, there's characteristics that it takes a while to decipher, and usually you're wrong, but sometimes you're right as well.
Yeah, and I remember when you mentioned that last year on the podcast, and you're the first person I've ever come across that measured, documented the rubs and tried to put those tine marks in correlation.
Yeah, and now you can stand next to it. I got some in the salt marsh like that, where I seen that big 160 this year. I mean, I know it's him because he's just super wide and really long tines, but I mean, there's tine marks up near my armpit, and it's like, it's got to be him because he had tines this long, and you look at a deer, you're like, all right, well, he's kind of standing here, and you kind of correlate, like, all right, there's 12-inch, 14-inch tines, or who's making that? Because they're not going to jump up and make things, you know.
Right.
So, or you get the trees where the tine marks are behind, like, all right, cluster trees, you got tine marks on trees that are 12 inches behind it. He's a long tined or a long main beam deer.
So when you see a rub for the first time, you take into consideration height over diameter.
Yes, height and tine marks, because deer could be just we've killed all short. I've killed a couple mature bucks that got short stubby legs. I've killed some with really long legs. So you look at the base and then what's above the main where they're rubbing with their brow tines. And you can see up high and down low, and it's, you might get right, 50% of the time. But now with cameras, it's a lot easier to know what's hitting it. And I want to get back into that this fall. I found some really good rubs and an idea where that big 5-pointer was. I got an idea where he might be coming from. So I want to put a camera out there. I got to figure out a way to put it in the salt marsh and not have the tide take it away or someone steal it. So I got to talk with some trappers, and see what they do with their traps, how to keep a fox or coyote from taking it out, I guess. I don't know.
That sounds like an interesting project. Yeah. Let me ask you this. So this is obviously airing probably in October. If you're coming across a rub for the first time in October, what are some things that you're considering? I know you talked about whether it's perennial or where's it at and how many are there, but
food. If you look at you come across oak flat and there's rubs, it's probably because there's food there. Especially if it's not all the time, he's either cruising looking for food, beginning of October, or he's cruising, from food to bedding. As the month rolls on, I think deer every 2 weeks are constantly changing. The food changes, pressure changes, their testosterone level changes, daylight level changes, the does patterns change. So if after a few years hunting a spot, you can kind of break it down into what it might be. Estimated guess, it's a guess at best, I'm not a scientist or radio tracking deer, but I've hunted some non-pressured areas and they behave differently than some of the areas that I hunt, which is very understandable. If you hunt pressured areas, and deer are going to be hold tight to cover. Rubs are usually in thick, nasty stuff, and if you do find one out in the open, it's nighttime, field edge, garbage stuff.
So let me paint you this scenario. You're on an oak flat. You see rubs. How are you going to set up on that deer? Or are you what other pieces are you looking for to see if you need to set up on it?
If it's near bedding, I'd give it a shot. But if it's just in the middle, say, no possible bedding calls in October, I won't hunt it. I'll hunt them, if it's near bedding area going to and from. Or food, I'm not a big fan of hunting food personally. Mm-hmm. I've never had much luck. A lot of people do. I just don't. So if I get rubs near bedding, that gets me excited.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like scrapes
relating
in the same sense. Like if the sign that you're finding correlated to bedding. If it's close to bedding, it's probably a good sign to hunt.
Yeah, as some of the people know, I'm a big bed hunter. Pushing damn near 30 years. Old Roger Ragland stuff.
Do you think you're not finding much luck on food because of how pressured it is?
Yeah, they're coming in, or they're coming in. And being a self filmer, that's the worst. Because I've passed numerous deer because I couldn't get on film, and I stopped filming this year because I wanted to kill something. Because of I'm not getting paid that. I just want to kill something big. But food is it's can play off in November. But for the most part, he's in there looking for ladies, not for the food.
Right.
And I find most daylight activity near beds, within 100 yards of a bed, and some deer don't even rub at all near their bed because I think it draws attention. Like rubs, like you said, it's like a magnet. People go, oh, rub, and they go right to it, and then they stink it up, and the deer's like, wait a minute, if I rub here, he might be getting close to me. So I've had some bucks that come out of bed, you see him come out of bed, there's no rubs to be found. Like he doesn't rub because rubs can equal danger. Scrapes equal danger, and some deer are just wired differently. And some deer don't care, and other deer are so secretive and so, they don't be bothered at all. They're just like, I ain't doing shit here. I'll rub like 500 yards away.
So let's backpedal quite a bit. So say I'm walking into a new piece of property. I have this property I hunt in Pennsylvania that I've been trying to figure out forever. Tons of rubs. Like everywhere you look, it's like, oh, there's a rub, there's a rub, there's a rub. Where I hunt in Ohio, not like that at all. But so I'm walking into this piece of property. I'm trying to correlate, like, okay, there's rubs here, there's rubs here, there's rubs here, there's rubs here. When a buck is rubbing a tree, what is he saying? Like, what is?
He's just leaving a scent. For me, it's like a scent signposting, or he's just like super aggressive. It could be a young deer, just testosterone's pumping, or it's some deer like rub friendly, like they're just letting everybody know this is my spot. Like,
so it's territorial.
Yeah, it's definitely food related, bedding related, or like a sexually related. I don't think they're going to rub like, oh, I'm just going to rub something for no reason. Deer are pretty, they don't do things just to do things. Usually there's a reason why they're doing it. But I've had, like I said, with the CRP fields and random fields, just everything's thrashed. And I do believe it's just more bucks in there.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or guys like, this is my spot. There's 3 bucks, but just back up. This is my home. Get off my couch.
Yeah, in those CRP fields too, those bushes or young trees, they're way more visual too. I'm sure the deer, and it's not like the hardwood. And which tree do I rub? Like that's the only thing, and they go and beat the heck out of it.
Yeah, and and if you have that, is like I look at direction, travel, wind. You put different. You start looking at things like with perennial rubs. You see they're pointing one direction. Usually, like the big signpost rubs, I find they're heading one direction. They're not. Very rarely do I find one that's like a 2-way rub line. It's usually just going from point A to point B. Where it's going is another story. But like them areas that are just totally thrashed, might be a buck that, he's guarding it. I'm trying to go, this is my turf, or it could be a buck that's new to the area and he's like, oh, all right, I'll take this. He smells the doe and he's like, all right, and he's letting other deer know that there's other deer here.
Right.